The signal came from deep space on a Tuesday morning. Dr. Sarah Chen was drinking her third cup of coffee when the computers at the Deep Space Monitoring Station began screaming with alerts. The message was clear, direct, and terrifying in its simplicity. Greetings, primitive species of the third planet. You will submit to the authority of the Zephyrian hegemony. Resistance is futile. Prepare for integration into our empire. Sarah stared at the translation scrolling across her screen. After decades of searching for alien life, contact had finally come, but not the peaceful first contact that humanity had hoped for. The message had been sent from the edge of the solar system by a massive alien fleet. Long-range telescopes confirmed what the signals suggested. Thousands of ships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. The aliens called themselves the Zephyrian hegemony, a union of 12 different species that controlled most of their local galaxy. Within hours, emergency meetings were happening in every major capital on Earth. Presidents, prime ministers, and generals gathered around screens showing the alien fleet. The ships were beautiful in a deadly way. Sleek vessels that seemed to bend light around them with weapons that glowed like captured stars. The leader of the alien fleet was Admiral Korthak of the Corvan Empire. He was a 7-foot-tall creature, with 4 arms and skin like black metal. His voice came through the communication channels like grinding stone. "Your species is young and weak," Korthak said during the first diplomatic contact, "but you show promise. Submit now, and some of your people will be allowed to serve the hegemony. Fight us, and your entire world will burn." The human delegation was led by Secretary General Maria Santos of the United Nations. She was a small woman compared to the towering alien, but her voice never shook. "We appreciate your offer," Santos said carefully, "but humanity prefers to remain independent. We're willing to discuss trade agreements and peaceful coexistence." The alien admiral's laugh was like breaking glass. "You misunderstand, little creature. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact. You have 7 of your days to surrender completely. After that, we will take what we want from your corpses." The communication ended, leaving the human leaders staring at blank screens. The hegemony fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 50,000 warships of various sizes, from small fighters to massive dreadnoughts that stretched for miles. Each ship bristled with energy weapons that could turn planets into ash. The fleet represented the combined military might of 12 advanced civilizations, some of which had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. On the hegemony flagship, other alien commanders gathered around Admiral Korthak. There was General Vex of the insectoid Chthari, whose species had perfected biological warfare. Commander Zela of the energy-based Luminary brought ships that could phase through solid matter. The telepathic Valeth had vessels that could attack enemy mines directly. "Why waste time with warnings?" asked General Vex, his mandibles clicking with annoyance. "These humans are barely capable of reaching their own moon. We should simply take their world." "Because fear is a weapon too," Korthak replied. "When other primitive species hear how humanity fell, they will surrender without forcing us to waste ammunition." The aliens had studied human broadcasts for months before revealing themselves. They knew about human technology, human weapons, and human military capabilities. By their calculations, humanity was at least 500 years behind the least advanced member of the hegemony. Humans used chemical rockets that took months to reach their neighboring planets. Their most powerful weapons were crude fusion bombs that could destroy cities, but were nothing compared to planetary bombardment systems. Their ships were fragile metal constructs that required life support systems just to keep their crews alive in space. "They don't even have proper energy shields," laughed Commander Zala. "Their vessels are protected by mere metal plates. Our weakest fighters could cut through their strongest ships like they were made of paper." But there was something else in the human broadcasts that puzzled some of the alien commanders. Human entertainment was filled with stories about war, conflict, and violence. Their history showed a species that had spent most of its existence fighting itself with increasingly deadly weapons. They seem remarkably focused on military technology for such a primitive species, observed Counselor Thrin of the scholarly Etherian Republic. Perhaps we should study them more carefully before— Enough, Korthak cut him off. They are insects compared to us. This will be over quickly. On Earth, humanity's response was swift and united in a way that surprised even human leaders. Every nation, every military, every scientist and engineer began working toward a single goal. Not surrender, but resistance. The 7-day deadline approached like a countdown to extinction. News networks around the world showed the same images. Families saying goodbye, children being moved to underground shelters, and military forces preparing for a battle they couldn't possibly win. But in the deepest military installations on Earth, other preparations were taking place. Projects that had been classified beyond top secret were suddenly given unlimited resources. Weapons that existed only in theory became reality overnight. Technologies that had been deemed too dangerous for peacetime use were activated. The world's best minds worked around the clock. Nuclear physicists, weapons designers, AI specialists, and military strategists shared information that had been kept secret for decades. What they created in those 7 days would have been impossible under normal circumstances. On the final day, as the alien fleet moved into attack position around Earth's moon, humanity sent its response. Not a message of surrender, but a simple statement that confused every alien commander in the hegemony fleet. We will meet you at the edge of our system. Our representative is on the way. The aliens watched in disbelief as a single human ship left Earth's orbit. It was tiny compared to their massive dreadnoughts, barely 800 meters long and shaped like a simple metal cylinder. The ship moved slowly on primitive fusion drives, taking hours to clear Earth's gravity well. Is this some kind of joke? General Vex asked, studying the approaching vessel. They're sending one ship against 50,000? Perhaps it carries their surrender documents, suggested Commander Zala. But Admiral Korthak was studying the readings more carefully. The human ship was strange. Its metal hull showed no energy signatures, no shield generators, no visible weapons. It looked more like a cargo vessel than a warship. What are they thinking? He muttered. The human ship identified itself with a simple transmission. This is the UES Defiance. We are here to discuss your departure from our system. Across the galaxy, other civilizations watched the confrontation through intercepted communications and long-range sensors. The hegemony had made sure that news of humanity's conquest would spread quickly as an example to other worlds. What they saw made no sense. A single primitive ship facing the largest military force ever assembled. It seemed like certain suicide. But Captain Elena Vasquez, commander of the Defiance, sat calmly in her command chair as her ship approached the alien fleet. Her crew was small, only 50 people, but each one was a specialist in technologies the galaxy had never seen. Range. To target? She asked quietly. 2 million kilometers and closing, Captain, her weapons officer replied. Very well. All stations prepare for combat operations. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity had spent 7 days in apparent panic, and why they had sent only one ship to face extinction. The guns were about to roar. The UES Defiance moved through space like a metal needle threading through a storm of giants. Around it, the hegemony fleet spread across millions of cubic kilometers, a wall of alien steel and energy that blocked out the stars themselves. On the bridge of the flagship Eternal Conquest, Admiral Korthak watched the human ship approach with growing confusion. The vessel was so small that his tactical display had to magnify it just to show its position clearly. Scan results, science, officer, Korthak demanded. The Etherian scientist, Counselor Thrin, manipulated his control panel with 6 delicate fingers. The readings are Unusual, Admiral. The ship appears to be constructed of simple steel and titanium alloys. No exotic materials detected. No energy shields. No visible weapon ports. No shields. General Vex clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his species. They truly are primitives. The bridge crew of various alien species shared the amusement. Commander Zala's energy form flickered with colors that indicated humor among the Luminari. The Veilith telepaths whispered to each other in their shared mental network, their amusement rippling through nearby minds. Perhaps it's a sacrifice ritual, suggested Captain Morn of the aquatic deep current. Some primitive species offer their finest warriors to appease superior forces, but Admiral Korthak wasn't entirely convinced. Something about the human ship bothered him. It moved too confidently, too directly toward the center of their formation. Any sane species would have approached cautiously, transmitted desperate, pleas for mercy, or simply fled. "Open a communication channel," he ordered. The image of Captain Elena Vasquez appeared on the main screen. She was a middle-aged human woman with short dark hair and calm brown eyes. She wore a simple blue uniform without excessive decoration. Behind her, the bridge of the Defiance looked almost primitive compared to the advanced displays and exotic technologies of hegemony ships. "Captain Vasquez," Admiral Korthak began, "I am Admiral Korthak of the Zephyrian hegemony. Your species has ignored our generous offer of surrender. This single ship cannot possibly represent your entire military response." Captain Vasquez smiled, slightly. "Actually, Admiral, it does. The Defiance is here to give you one final chance to leave our system peacefully." The silence that followed was broken only by the clicking of General Vex's mandibles and the low hum of the Luminari's energy patterns. "You cannot be serious," Korthak said finally. "We have 50,000 warships. You have one. Our smallest. Fighters are larger than your vessel." "Numbers aren't everything," Vasquez replied calmly. "We've studied your fleet composition through your own broadcasts. Very impressive. But you've made one critical error in your planning." "And what error is that?" "You assumed we were primitive." Across the galaxy, other civilizations watched the exchange through intercepted communications. On the water world of Aquatica, the amphibious tidal council gathered around their organic view screens, their gill slits fluttering with nervousness. "The humans show impressive courage," gurgled Counselor Reefsinger, "but courage alone cannot stop plasma cannons." On the crystal planet of Harmonics, the crystalline resonant collective vibrated with frequencies of concern. They had traded with the hegemony before and knew the power of their weapons. "This will be a short battle," rang the crystal voice of Primary Shard. "Perhaps we should prepare a memorial frequency for these brave humans." Even on distant worlds that had never heard of either humanity or the hegemony, the news was spreading. A single ship facing the largest fleet in galactic history. Most species assumed they were witnessing either incredible stupidity or an elaborate form of suicide. But there were a few voices of caution. The ancient Eternals, who had observed galactic politics for millions of years, sent a brief message to their archives. "Monitor closely. Unprecedented confidence suggests hidden capabilities." Back in the Sol system, the confrontation continued. Admiral Korthak had grown tired of what he saw as human delusions. "Enough of this foolishness," he declared. "Captain Vasquez, you have one final chance to surrender. Order your ship to power down and prepare to be boarded. Your crew will be treated well if they cooperate." "I'm afraid I can't do that, Admiral," Vasquez replied. "This is your last warning. Leave our system now, or face the consequences." General Vex leaned forward, his compound eyes gleaming. "Admiral, let me send a squadron of fighters to disable their engines. We can capture them alive and learn how this species developed such impressive self-delusion." Admiral Korthak considered this. The human ship was indeed tiny compared to his fighters, and its primitive construction meant that even low-power weapons should be able to disable it without causing much damage. Very well, he decided. Fighter Wing Alpha, move to intercept. Disable the human vessel's engines only. I want prisoners to interrogate. 12 sleek Corvan fighters detached from the main fleet. Each one was twice the size of the human ship and armed with plasma cannons that could vaporize asteroids. They moved in perfect formation, their pilots confident in their superiority. Captain Vasquez watched the approaching fighters on her tactical display. Weapons, are you tracking the incoming hostiles? Yes, Captain, replied Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim from the weapons station. Range is 800,000 kilometers and closing. They're moving in a standard attack formation. Very good. Helm, bring us to combat orientation. All stations. This is not a drill. Prepare to engage. The bridge of the Defiance transformed as hidden panels slid away to reveal advanced control systems. The simple metal walls suddenly displayed holographic tactical data that would have been impressive even by hegemony standards. Admiral Korthak noticed the change immediately. What are they doing? Those displays weren't there before. Counselor Thrin worked frantically at his scanning equipment. Admiral, I'm detecting massive power fluctuations inside the human ship. Energy readings are increasing exponentially. That's impossible. Our scans showed no advanced power systems. Sir, I think their ship is equipped with some kind of stealth technology. The real systems were hidden beneath the surface readings. For the first time since the encounter began, Admiral Korthak felt a touch of unease. Recall the fighters. But it was too late. Captain Vasquez spoke quietly to her crew. Gentlemen, ladies, you all know what's at stake here. Earth is counting on us to send a clear message. Let's not disappoint them. She turned to her weapons officer. Lieutenant Commander Kim, you may fire when ready. Aye, Captain. Firing. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology, but their willingness to use it without hesitation. The first shot came from a weapon system that no alien species had ever seen before. It made no sound in the vacuum of space, produced no visible beam, and gave no warning. The lead Corvan fighter simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, racing toward the human ship with plasma cannons charging. The next moment, there was only expanding debris and superheated gas. What happened? Admiral Korthak demanded. Report! But before anyone could answer, the second fighter vanished in the same way. Then the third. Then the fourth. In less than 10 seconds, 12 of the hegemony's finest fighters had been reduced to scrap metal by an enemy they couldn't even see attacking. Admiral? Counselor Thrin's voice was shaking. The human ship. It's not what we thought it was. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Vasquez watched the destruction with professional satisfaction. Very good, weapons. Clean kills, minimal debris. Continue tracking additional targets. Aye, Captain. Railgun system is cycling for continuous fire. Admiral Korthak stared at the tactical display where 12 green dots had simply disappeared. Around him, his bridge crew was silent with shock. How? He whispered. Captain Vasquez's voice came through the communication channel, still calm and professional. Admiral, you now have a choice. Order your fleet to leave our system immediately or discover how we destroyed your fighters. This is impossible, Korthak said. Our sensors detected no weapons fire, no energy discharge, nothing. That's because you've never encountered kinetic weapons before, Vasquez explained patiently. We don't use energy beams or plasma. We use physics. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the balance of power shifted with 12 simple deaths. The largest fleet in history had just lost its first engagement to a single human ship, and nobody understood how. The real battle was about to begin. Admiral Korthak's 4 hands gripped his command chair as he stared at the impossible display before him. 12 fighters gone in seconds, and his sensors hadn't detected a single energy discharge from the human ship. "Physics?" he repeated Captain Vasquez's words. "What do you mean by physics?" "Simple Newtonian mechanics, Admiral. Mass times acceleration equals force. We just apply it more efficiently than you do." General Vex's mandibles clicked rapidly with agitation. "Admiral, request permission to engage with the full fleet. Whatever trick they used, it cannot work against thousands of ships." Admiral Korthak hesitated. The loss of 12 fighters was embarrassing but not strategically significant. However, the complete failure of his sensors to detect the attack method was deeply troubling. "Captain Vasquez," he said slowly, "I admit your weapons system is more advanced than we initially assessed, but you face 50,000 ships. Even if your mysterious weapon can destroy one ship per second, it would take you 14 hours to defeat our fleet. We will overwhelm you through sheer numbers." Captain Vasquez's smile on the communication screen was not reassuring. "Admiral, you're making the same mistake everyone makes about humans. You're thinking small." She turned to her tactical officer. "Commander Chen, please show our guests the full capabilities of the Defiance." "Aye, Captain. Bringing all weapon. Systems online." The human ship began to change. What had appeared to be a simple metal cylinder started to unfold like a deadly flower. Sections of the hull slid away to reveal massive cylindrical structures underneath. Weapon ports opened along, the ship's length like hungry mouths. Energy readings spiked to levels that made hegemony sensors scream with overload warnings. "Impossible," whispered Counselor Thrin. "The ship is 3 times larger than our initial scans indicated. How did they hide so much mass?" "Dense materials," Captain Vasquez explained helpfully. "We build our ships around compressed matter cores, much more efficient than your energy-based construction methods." The first salvo from the Defiance lit up space like a newborn star. Railguns fired tungsten slugs at 12% of light speed. Each projectile carried the kinetic energy of a nuclear weapon, but moved too fast for any known point defense system to intercept. They passed through energy shields as if they didn't exist, because shields designed to stop energy beams were useless against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The hegemony cruiser Stellar Dominance was the first capital ship to die. The tungsten slug punched through its hull from nose to stern, the impact creating a column of superheated plasma that cooked everything inside. Secondary explosions followed as the ship's own power systems overloaded and detonated. "Shields had no effect," reported the tactical officer aboard the flagship. "The projectile passed through our barriers like they weren't there. But the railguns were only the beginning." Nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers came online next. Unlike the visible light energy weapons used by hegemony forces, these lasers were powered by controlled fusion explosions that lasted only microseconds but generated incredible amounts of coherent radiation in the X-ray spectrum. The beam struck the battleship Void Render and cut it in half like a molecular blade. The ship's armor, designed to resist plasma bombardment and particle beams, offered no protection against focused X-ray radiation that heated its molecular structure beyond the melting point of any known material. "By the ancestors," General Vex breathed. "They're using controlled nuclear explosions as power sources for their weapons." The third weapon system was perhaps the most disturbing to alien: mines. Kinetic missiles launched from the Defiance didn't follow ballistic trajectories like normal ordnance. Instead, they moved with intelligent purpose, adjusting their courses to avoid defensive fire and seeking optimal impact points on enemy vessels. "The missiles are thinking," reported Commander Zala, her energy form flickering with confusion. "They're adapting to our countermeasures in real time." "Artificial intelligence guidance systems," Captain Vasquez confirmed. "Each missile has a computer brain more advanced than most of your ship's navigation systems. One of the AI-guided missiles struck the carrier Dawn's Promise at precisely the moment when its fighter bay doors were opening to launch additional craft. The explosion gutted the ship from the inside, turning what should have been a glancing blow into a catastrophic kill. But it was the fourth weapon that truly terrified the hegemony fleet: antimatter torpedoes. The first one detonated against the super dreadnought Galaxy's Fist, and for a brief moment, a new sun blazed in the darkness of space. The matter-antimatter annihilation released energy with perfect efficiency, converting mass directly into radiation according to Einstein's famous equation. The explosion vaporized the 12-kilometer-long dreadnought instantly and damaged every ship within a 100-kilometer radius. The flash was so bright that automatic filters on every ship in the fleet activated to protect crew members from blindness. Antimatter. Counselor Thrin's voice was barely a whisper. They're using antimatter as a weapon. The energy release is theoretically perfect. Admiral Korthak finally understood the magnitude of his error. The humans hadn't developed energy weapons because they didn't need them. Why build plasma cannons when you could accelerate solid matter to relativistic speeds? Why create particle beams when you could harness the power of nuclear fusion? Why bother with conventional explosives when you could annihilate matter itself? All ships, evasive maneuvers, he commanded. Scatter formation. Return fire with everything we have. The hegemony fleet began to move, but they were like ancient sailing ships trying to fight a modern submarine. Their tactics, their weapons, their entire understanding of space combat was based on energy warfare between opponents who could see each other's attacks coming. The human ship fought like nothing they had ever encountered. It moved unpredictably. Its weapons fired without visible beams or projectiles, and its attacks arrived without warning. Ships simply exploded or were cut in half or ceased to exist entirely. "Fire everything!" General Vex screamed into his communicator. "Plasma cannons, particle beams, fusion torpedoes! Destroy that ship!" Hundreds of energy weapons fired at the Defiance. Plasma bolts that could melt asteroids, particle beams that could disrupt molecular bonds, and fusion warheads that could crack planetoids all converged on the human ship's position. The barrage lit up local space like a miniature galaxy. Energy readings spiked beyond measurement. The combined firepower of a dozen civilizations focused on a single target. When the energy storm cleared, the Defiance was still there, completely undamaged. "How?" Admiral Korthak asked the question that was echoing through every mind in the hegemony fleet. "Kinetic barriers," Captain Vasquez explained calmly while her ship continued its deadly work. "We don't use energy shields because we don't fight with energy weapons. Our defenses are based on physical armor and electromagnetic deflection fields. Your plasma bolts might as well be flashlights." The slaughter continued. Every few seconds, another hegemony ship died in fire and vacuum. The human vessel moved through the alien formation like a shark among minnows, its weapons striking with lethal precision. "Admiral," the communication officer reported with a trembling voice, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 ships. They're requesting permission to withdraw from the battle." "Denied!" Korthak snarled. "No retreat! We still outnumber them thousands to one!" But even as he spoke, he could see the tactical situation deteriorating. His fleet was massive, but not organized for this kind of warfare. Ships were colliding with each other as they tried to avoid the invisible death that struck from the human vessel. Communication channels were filled with panic and confusion. "Admiral," Counselor Thrin spoke quietly, "perhaps we should consider the possibility that we have underestimated this species more severely than we thought possible." Admiral Korthak watched another of his dreadnoughts disappear in antimatter fire. In 10 minutes of combat, he had lost more ships than in the previous 10 years of conquest. "Signal the reserves," he commanded. "Bring in the second and third fleets." "Sir?" "Everything. Every ship we have. If this is what one human vessel can do, I don't want to find out what happens if they send more." But Captain Vasquez heard the transmission. Her smile was sharp as a blade. "I'm afraid it's too late for reinforcements, Admiral. You see, we're not the only ones who have been busy these past 7 days." On cue, new contacts appeared on every sensor screen in the hegemony fleet. Not one ship, but dozens. All of them identical to the Defiance. All of them powering up weapons that the galaxy was just beginning to understand. The real war was about to begin. The emergence of 37 additional human ships from behind Earth's moon changed everything. Each vessel was identical to the Defiance, sleek, deadly, and impossible to detect until they chose to reveal themselves. Admiral Korthak stared at his tactical display in growing horror. Where did they come from? Our scouts reported only one human ship. They were hidden in the electromagnetic shadow of their moon, reported Counselor Thrin, his 6 fingers working frantically at his scanner controls. Their stealth technology is more advanced than anything in our databases. Captain Vasquez's voice came through the communication channel with the same calm professionalism she had maintained throughout the battle. Admiral, meet the Terran Defense Fleet. 38 ships built in 7 days by a species you thought was primitive. Impossible, General Vex clicked. No civilization can construct 38 warships in 7 days. You can when your entire planet works together, Vasquez replied. When Earth's survival was at stake, every factory, every shipyard, every construction facility was converted to military production. We didn't sleep for a week. The truth was even more impressive than she let on. Humanity had been preparing for this moment since they first detected alien signals years earlier. Secret projects in underground facilities had been developing weapons and ship designs based on one simple principle. If humanity ever faced a superior alien force, they would meet it with overwhelming technological surprise. The 38 ships of the Terran Defense Fleet represented the combined scientific knowledge of human civilization focused into instruments of war. Each ship carried weapons that pushed the boundaries of physics itself. All ships, Captain, Vasquez transmitted to her fleet. You know your orders. Demonstrate human resolve. Leave no enemy vessel intact. What followed was not a battle, but a systematic destruction of the largest military fleet in galactic history. The human ships moved in perfect coordination, their advanced AI systems sharing targeting data and tactical information in real time. Where the hegemony fleet was a collection of different species with different technologies and tactics, the human fleet was a single organism with 38 deadly arms. Railgun fire crisscrossed space like invisible threads of death. Ships that tried to maneuver away from one human vessel only moved into the firing solution of another. The tungsten slugs traveled so fast that by the time alien crews detected the launch, the projectile had already arrived. The battleship Cosmic Tyrant tried to use a nearby asteroid for cover, only to watch in horror as a human railgun punched through the entire asteroid and struck the ship on the other side. The rock provided no protection against weapons that could penetrate several kilometers of solid matter. Nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers created a grid of destruction across the battlefield. Unlike energy weapons that took time to cycle between shots, the human lasers could fire as fast as their fusion chambers could detonate and reset. Some ships found themselves hit by multiple laser strikes in the span of seconds, their hulls sliced apart like meat under a molecular knife. They're not targeting our weapons or engines, observed Commander Zala as her ship barely avoided a laser blast that removed its entire forward section. They're trying to kill us outright. It was true. Human military doctrine was brutally simple. If an enemy threatened Earth's survival, that enemy would be eliminated completely. No prisoners, no disabled ships, no mercy. The galaxy had declared war on humanity, and humanity had accepted. The AI-guided missiles were perhaps the most terrifying aspect of the human attack. Each missile was essentially a small spacecraft with its own computer brain, capable of learning and adapting during flight. They could avoid defensive fire, choose optimal approach routes, and even coordinate with other missiles for maximum effect. A squadron of Chitauri destroyers tried to form a defensive formation, their point defense systems creating overlapping fields of fire. The human missiles responded by splitting into smaller sub-munitions that attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. Some missiles sacrificed themselves to clear a path for others. Some pretended to be disabled only to reactivate at the last moment. Some actually learned from the defensive fire and adapted their approach patterns in real time. "The missiles are talking to each other," reported the tactical officer on the flagship. "They're sharing information and updating their attack protocols during combat." But it was the antimatter torpedoes that truly broke the hegemony fleet's morale. Each torpedo carried enough antimatter to annihilate several city blocks worth of matter. When they detonated, they didn't just destroy their targets, they erased them from existence, converting mass directly into energy with perfect efficiency. The supercarrier Endless Victory, pride of the Valeth Collective, died when 3 antimatter torpedoes struck it simultaneously. The ship didn't explode or break apart. It simply ceased to exist, replaced by an expanding sphere of pure energy that illuminated half the solar system. "They're using the fundamental forces of the universe as weapons," whispered Counselor Thrin. "Matter-antimatter annihilation is the most powerful energy release possible under the laws of physics." Admiral Korthak watched his fleet disappear, ship by ship. In 30 minutes of combat, he had lost over 3,000 vessels. His casualties were mounting faster than his crews could report them. "Signal retreat," he commanded. "Sir?" His communications officer looked confused. "All ships, general retreat. Break off engagement and withdraw to minimum safe distance." "Admiral," General Vex protested, "we still outnumber them more than 1,000 to 1. "Look at your screens," Korthak snarled. "Numbers mean nothing when the enemy can destroy our ships faster than we can count them." The hegemony fleet began to withdraw, but the human ships pursued them relentlessly. There would be no safe retreat, no regrouping, no second chance to threaten Earth. "Admiral," Captain Vasquez's voice cut through the chaos of retreat orders, "I'm afraid we can't allow you to leave." "What?" "You came here to destroy humanity. We can't let you return to your space with information about our capabilities. You understand?" Admiral Korthak finally realized the true horror of humanity's position. They weren't just defending themselves. They were eliminating a threat permanently. "You mean to destroy us all?" he said. "Yes," Vasquez replied simply. "Every ship, every crew member, every trace that this fleet ever existed. The galaxy needs to understand that threatening Earth has consequences." The human ships accelerated, their pursuit of the fleeing hegemony vessels relentless and methodical. No alien ship was fast enough to escape the human weapons. No defensive formation was strong enough to withstand human firepower. But the most terrifying aspect of the human attack was its precision. The human ships weren't firing randomly or in anger. They were systematically working through target lists, destroying the hegemony fleet in order of strategic importance. Command ships died first, leaving entire formations without coordination. Carrier vessels were targeted next, eliminating fighter support. Heavy battleships fell to focused antimatter bombardment. Even the smallest escort vessels were hunted, down with the same mechanical efficiency. "They fight like machines," observed the captain of the surviving cruiser Last Hope. "No emotion, no mercy, just pure mathematical destruction." It was an accurate assessment. Human military AI had calculated the optimal way to eliminate the hegemony threat, and human crews were executing that plan with professional detachment. The galaxy watched in stunned horror as the largest military force in history was systematically annihilated by 38 ships from a species that had been dismissed as primitive. The live broadcasts that were supposed to show humanity's conquest instead showed their emergence as the most dangerous military force in known space. On distant worlds, alien leaders gathered in emergency sessions. The news was spreading faster than light through quantum communication networks. Humanity was not what they appeared to be. The Aquatic Tidal Council sent immediate diplomatic messages to Earth offering trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. The crystalline resonant collective began composing harmonic poems, praising human wisdom and strength. Even the ancient Eternals, who had remained neutral in galactic affairs for millions of years, sent a formal message acknowledging humanity as a significant power. But in the Sol system, the slaughter continued. Admiral Korthak's flagship was one of the last ships remaining, and it was surrounded by human vessels whose weapons were trained on his hull. "Admiral," Captain Vasquez's final message was broadcast on all frequencies so the galaxy could hear, "You came here to enslave or destroy humanity. Instead, you have learned why we are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. We fight not for conquest or glory, but for survival. And when we fight for survival, we do not stop until the threat is eliminated." The communication ended, and the eternal conquest exploded in antimatter fire. The hegemony fleet was gone. 50,000 ships reduced to expanding clouds of superheated gas in less than 2 hours. But the real message had been sent to the galaxy. Earth was no longer hiding. In the silence that followed the destruction of the hegemony fleet, the galaxy held its breath. 50,000 warships had become nothing more than debris and radiation in the span of 2 hours. The largest military force in recorded history had been erased by 38 ships from a species most civilizations had never heard of. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the expanding clouds of superheated gas that had once been alien vessels. Around her, the other ships of the Terran Defense Fleet maintained their positions, weapons still active, sensors sweeping space for any remaining threats. "All ships report mission complete," announced Lieutenant Commander Kim from the weapons station. "No surviving enemy vessels detected." "Very good. Begin recovery operations. I want every piece of alien technology collected and analyzed, and scanned for escape pods or life signs." "Captain," asked Commander Chen from the tactical station, "what should we do if we find survivors?" Vasquez considered this carefully. "Rescue them. Document their testimonies. Then decide whether they're going home. The answer to that question would depend on what the survivors had seen and what they might report to their home worlds. Some aliens might be allowed to return with carefully edited memories of the battle. Others, particularly military officers who had observed human weapons capabilities too closely, might find themselves permanent guests on Earth. But the real impact of the battle was already spreading across the galaxy through quantum communication networks and hyperspace relays. The live broadcasts that the hegemony had arranged to show humanity's conquest had instead documented their own annihilation. On the water world of Aquatica, the Tidal Council emergency session had been ongoing for 6 hours. The amphibious leaders floated in their council chambers, gill slits fluttering with agitation as they debated their response to the news from Earth. "The humans destroyed 50,000 ships, gurgled Counselor Deep Current. "That's more firepower than the entire Aquatic Defense Fleet possesses. More than all our allied fleets combined," added Counselor Reef Singer. "We must send diplomatic envoys immediately. Offer them whatever they want. Trade agreements, technology exchanges, mutual defense pacts." "What if they're not interested? In diplomacy?" asked Counselor Trenchwalker. "What if they see us as a threat too?" The question hung in the water like a poisonous cloud. The humans had just demonstrated that they were capable of destroying any military force in the galaxy. What if they decided that the safest approach was to eliminate all potential threats preemptively? Similar conversations were happening on thousands of worlds across known space. The crystalline resonant collective vibrated with harmonic frequencies of fear and respect as they debated whether to hide from humanity or attempt to establish peaceful relations. On the gas giant Nimbus, the cloud-dwelling ethereals, who had remained neutral in galactic politics for centuries, suddenly found themselves drafting messages of congratulation to Earth. Better to be friends with the apex predators than to risk being seen as potential prey. Even the ancient Eternals, whose civilization predated most galactic governments by millions of years, convened their first emergency council session in over 10,000 years. "This changes everything," resonated the voice of Primary Eternal, a being so old that its species had forgotten its original form. "Humanity has demonstrated capabilities that exceed our theoretical models." "How is this possible?" asked Secondary Eternal. "Our records show that their civilization is barely 10,000 years old. They should still be developing basic space flight." "Perhaps," suggested Tertiary Eternal, "we have been thinking about technological development incorrectly. We assumed that energy-based weapons and exotic matter manipulation represented the pinnacle of military science. The humans have shown us that there are other paths to ultimate power." The implications were staggering. For millions of years, galactic civilizations had followed similar technological development patterns. They discovered energy manipulation, developed plasma weapons and particle beams, created exotic matter shields and hyperdrive systems. It was considered the natural progression of any advanced species. Humanity had taken a completely different path. Instead of focusing on energy manipulation, they had perfected the application of fundamental physical forces. Instead of exotic matter, they used dense conventional materials. Instead of energy shields, they relied on kinetic barriers and armor. The result was a military technology base that was completely alien to galactic norms, but devastatingly effective against conventional defenses. But the true shock came 12 hours after the battle, when Earth's government released its official response to the galaxy. The message was broadcast on all known communication frequencies and translated into every major galactic language. It was delivered by Secretary General Maria Santos, the same woman who had first spoken with Admiral Korthak 7 days earlier. "People of the galaxy," Santos began, her voice calm and professional, "humanity has become aware that our solar system was recently visited by a large military force with hostile intentions. That force has been eliminated." The simple statement sent shock waves through every government in known space. Santos continued, "We want to make several things clear to all civilizations who might be watching this broadcast. First, humanity has no interest in conquest or expansion into alien space. We are content to remain in our own solar system and develop our own civilization. Second, we have no interest in interfering with galactic politics, trade disputes, or territorial conflicts between other species. Your affairs are your own. Third, we are willing to establish peaceful diplomatic and trade relations with any civilization that approaches us with genuine peaceful intentions. However," and here Santos's voice took on a harder edge, "we want to make one thing absolutely clear to everyone listening. Earth is not available for conquest, subjugation, or annexation. Any force that approaches our system with hostile intent will be met with overwhelming defensive response. We have sent a copy of our defensive capabilities demonstration to every government and news organization in the galaxy. Study it carefully. Learn from the hegemony's mistake. We prefer peace, but we are very, very good at war." The message ended with coordinates for a diplomatic communication channel and an offer to establish formal relations with any interested governments. Within hours, that communication channel was overwhelmed with incoming messages. Every major power in the galaxy was suddenly desperate to establish friendly relations with humanity. The Corvan Empire, what remained of it after the destruction of their fleet, sent abject apologies and offers of tribute. The Chithari swarm offered to share their biological technologies in exchange for peace treaties. The Luminari Collective proposed a mutual defense agreement despite having never met humanity in person. Even civilizations that had been enemies for centuries suddenly found common ground in their shared desire to avoid humanity's attention. The Aquatic Federation and the Crystal Hegemony signed their first peace treaty in 3,000 years, partly motivated by their mutual fear of appearing unstable to human observers. But perhaps the most significant change was the collapse of the Zephyrian hegemony itself. The 12-species alliance that had controlled a significant portion of the galaxy for centuries dissolved within days of the battle. Each member species scrambled to distance themselves from the failed invasion of Earth. Some blamed the Corvan Empire for the aggressive policies. Others claimed they had opposed the attack from the beginning. A few actually turned over surviving Corvan military officers to human authorities as a gesture of goodwill. The power vacuum left by the hegemony's collapse created opportunities for smaller civilizations that had been suppressed for generations, but it also created uncertainty and fear. If humanity could destroy the galaxy's most powerful military alliance in 2 hours, what else might they be capable of? On Earth, the response to galactic attention was mixed. Some humans were excited about contact with alien civilizations and the possibilities for cultural and scientific exchange. Others worried that revealing humanity's military capabilities might have made Earth a target for more subtle forms of attack. But the government's position was clear. Humanity would engage with the galaxy on their own terms, from a position of demonstrated strength. Never again would Earth be vulnerable to alien threats. Captain Vasquez and the crew of the Defiance returned to Earth as heroes, but their real work was just beginning. The Terran Defense Fleet would be expanded to include hundreds of ships with even more advanced capabilities. Human technology would continue to develop along paths that alien civilizations couldn't predict or counter. The galaxy had learned that humanity was not primitive, not weak, and definitely not defenseless. But they had also learned something else about human nature that was perhaps even more important. Humans could be the most dangerous enemies in the galaxy, but they could also be valuable allies. Unlike the hegemony, which had sought to conquer and enslave, humanity seemed genuinely interested in peaceful coexistence. Trade began almost immediately. Human technologies that were considered primitive by galactic standards turned out to have applications that alien scientists had never considered. Similarly, alien